Yeah, I have a question, Ken. I don't mean to steer away from racing and cornering, but as you know, I'm a gear aficionado, and one of the things that really detracts from my writing very often is trying to set up my communications. And I'm trying to always decide between Sina and Cardo, and I was wondering if I know that you're sponsored by Sina, and I was wondering if you had any thoughts on the new mesh units as opposed to the older Bluetooth units, and what you like and what works for you when you're training people.
Yeah, so what ends up happening oftentimes is students will come with Bluetooth, and so we end up using Bluetooth a lot. It's only when I have students that have no communication systems, and then I use all my Senas, that I'll use the mesh system. And the mesh system does work. It's really great about once you get them hooked up, then people can kind of come and go, and there's no really reconnecting. Shouldn't be. It's worked pretty well. There've been a couple times I've had some issues. I'm going to throw this to Brian, though. Brian also has a lot of experience with communicators. What do you think, Brian?
Well, I wasn't a big fan of the mesh in the very beginning because, in all honesty, when we're riding, I just want to talk with Shira. And then when we have other people in the group, sometimes it gets a little confusing because everyone's talking at once. I've got the Cardo Pack Bold here. And Senna just sent me a press release yesterday. They've come out with a new version, the 50, and there's two versions of them. And a lot of the bugs that they thought they had with the 30s are evidently now gone. So I'll wait and see when we get them. We'll test them. The mesh takes a little bit more power out of the battery, but they last all day. And having good communication is really, really key. It's great to be able to talk to someone rather than doing hand signals and whatnot. But all of them are really, really good. The Cardo is an excellent system here. The Senas seem to work really well. They're all kind of like on par with each other at this point. So it all depends on what you want and what you're comfortable with. So I don't use their headsets. I use personal, earbuds.
You do. Interestingly, most of my helmets have the Sina 10 and 20 units in there. And I never made the sojourn over into mesh. And I found a low-cost solution that I was talking to Ken about a couple of weeks ago that actually, it's about $100. And it's something that Sina makes called the Plus Mesh. It's a little plus sign and the word mesh. And you have one on your desk, Brian?
No, I'm just writing it down.
And they work pretty flawlessly. I took a ride the other day with a colleague of mine, and we were using them, and it doesn't have the range as the actual mesh unit, but it's certainly great for line of sight without a doubt. And it adds all of the mesh capabilities to a Bluetooth unit, so that if you have a 10 or a 20 in your helmet, or you have a Schubert or one of the Shoei with the one of the built-in units, what you could do is actually add this mesh to your handlebar, and it talks to your helmet and then meshes out to all of the other riders that you're with. So I thought that was pretty neat. I'm looking forward to this 50, taking a look at the 50 that has just come out. It looks intriguing.
Yeah, so communication, just in general, if you've never done that, and you're riding with other people, particularly a spouse or a close friend or a couple of friends, it gets crazy when you get too many people. But it really changes things. Even off-road, if you're dirt riding, my friend Paul, but also Tony, when we go dirt riding, Tony almost doesn't want to go dirt riding unless we have communicators, and same with Paul. So it just changed everything. It's like you're riding together very much, and on the road, it's just another experience. It's for safety also, and less that I got to use the bathroom instead of trying to like come up next to somebody at a stop sign and doing all that signaling or all that stuff. Anyhow, I really recommend it just as an enhancement to riding. Also, I'll just throw out that I use it as coaching, and we do it on the track and on the street, and you get the real-time coaching, and that's really key. People love that.
Nothing like Ken's voice in your head when you're going around the track.
Another thing about that is that if you're an experienced rider and you have a less experienced rider with you, and you give them, him or her, a communicator, you have to be very careful about how much and when you talk, because it uses a lot of bandwidth for somebody who's a newer rider. I learned that with my soon-to-be son-in-law. He and I, we were down in North Carolina at some pretty challenging roads, and the two of us had taken off. Carolyn and Dean were on their bikes, and they were kind of back a little ways. And I was chattering on, just not even thinking about it. And afterwards, he said, "Geez, you know, you were talking," and I was like really trying all I could to concentrate. Like, "Oh, sorry, man," and I was like talking about a TV. That just goes to show you that how much, and you may not be aware of it, how much bandwidth, mental bandwidth it takes to ride a motorcycle when you're new, or and he was fairly new, or when it's just a different environment. So if you've never ridden really, really technical roads and suddenly you're on them, you got to respect the fact that you've got to take, you need all the bandwidth you can, all your wherewithal, and to have some in reserve too.
Oh, you're driving into a heavy traffic situation or trying to negotiate a new area and you got your favorite tune blaring. I can't. I mean, and as much as I love listening to the music and singing, I have to turn the radio down so I can think about the situation and actually do what I have to do. It's a distraction. Same reason I'll wear earplugs on the bike too, just because that white noise is giving a distraction.
That's right.
And fatiguing.
I agree. So that's another thing. A lot of people say, "Well, do you listen to music on your Bluetooth in the helmet?" And I say, yes, I do. But again, part of it is, the Dunning-Kruger thing. Remember, everybody thinks they're better than they are. And so I'll say, well, I've got enough bandwidth available to listen to, music. And it's probably true, but also I just am selective about my environment where I do actually put the music on. And so I don't tend to answer phones or anything like that. So that can wait. But